Started 6 years ago. We did a first round of funding last year of 6 million euros, and part of that money is now used to actually internationalize towards the US. So we started with a New York City-based office about 8 months ago or so. We sent a couple of guys here from the team in Amsterdam to New York, and we hired a couple of local guys there. It's mainly used for sales and marketing now, and hope to explore and grow there.
What was the Did you get to a certain ARR and said, okay, now it's time to go to the US? And if so, what was that? Or what was the real sort of compelling reason?
I think if I would do it, if I take a look at it now, I would have done it maybe a little bit sooner. But yeah, the problem is it cost a lot of money. I think up until now, in the first 6-7 months or so, we spent around 600-700K just on the US operation, which. Which is obviously money you don't have if you're a bootstrap company. You cannot just invest like 600-700K or so out of a regular operation. So for us, the step we only could take this step actually after we got the 6 million investment round. Yeah.
Okay. And Roel, what stage SaaS companies? So you're a VC, right? We didn't get a proper intro to you. You invest in not seed stage, but sort of slightly later, right?
Sort of growth stage. So I think what we typically, the sweet spot that we see is companies that have built a nice business in their home market and then want to internationalize. And most of them, with the ambitions to become a global leader. And then, the biggest market is the US. So maybe to Robin's point a bit, we're happy with looking in the Netherlands, although we invest throughout Europe. If they do well in the Netherlands, the next country would be the US versus going east or north or south in Europe. And then build a business there, because that's where it's the most competitive market. You can grow the fastest if you do it well, and you create most value for yourself as the entrepreneurs, as well as for us as investors.
Okay. So let's focus just a couple of questions on the do's of what you need to do, what you've done right in moving to the US, and the don'ts. Maybe some mistakes that you're happy to share, or maybe just common advice about how not to fuck up moving to the US. Right? So let's do that, and then we'll throw it open to the audience for hopefully questions about scaling to the US. But if you've got questions generally to Robin, or we'll take those as well. So let's talk about the do's. Like, what are some of the key things that you got right?
Yeah. So I think what struck me the most, or at least one of the things, is that when we started recruiting actually for US people to join the team out of our New York office, I did a couple of interviews without even having an office there. So I flew a couple of times, to New York, hired an office space, and just did some interviews. And after every interview, I really had the feeling, that this person was really, God's gift to Earth, right? Everybody is super fantastic. Everybody hit that target for, since they left university. Everybody was in the President Club. Heck, even, everybody thought that they could take my job after the interview. So I think it's super important that you do a real due diligence also on the people you hire there. We basically make use of a top grading interview methodology, where we really do a deep dive on the experience, 3 to 4 hour interviews in a structured way to really make sure that we really get the best people, basically. And that's even harder in the US than in Europe. So I think that's one of the biggest things you need to get right, I guess.
What about why New York and not San Francisco? Did you make that? Is that a right decision for you so far?
Yeah. So in the beginning, when we were thinking about US, we had lots of debate on where should we go? Boston, New York, San Francisco, any other city. And in hindsight, to be honest, it doesn't really matter. You can spend lots of time thinking about it. I think New York, Boston have the advantage that you are a little bit more in the time zone of the Netherlands. We only have a 6-hour difference, and that really helps. Because now, at 3 o'clock, so here in the afternoon, the US operation starts, and that's a big plus compared to the other side of US. So for me personally, I really like the choice of being on the East Coast. But yeah, Boston, New York, I don't know. There are so many pros and cons that, for me, it doesn't really matter.
And you said you sent a couple of people from Amsterdam, from the Amsterdam office. Is that the right thing to do, rather than let's just hire a brand new person in the US?
Yeah, from my experience, and also the experience I hear from other founders, is that if you have nobody who can actually move there from your home country, here based in Amsterdam, then in our case, if you cannot do that, it's hardly impossible to succeed there. Because you need to have people who have the DNA, who have the culture, who have the knowledge, who really understand the product, how it's been sold. If you don't have anybody, it's going to be a freaking challenge. And it really helped us that the guy who basically set up the sales organization in Europe, when we started our European sales organization, that guy basically moved now to the US along with some other guys. And yeah, that's, I think, one of the best decisions ever. Yeah.
And Roel, you've got a couple of portfolio companies that have moved to the US. Falcon, I think, is one of them. Also New York. What advice did you give as a VC? Like, make sure you do this right. Maybe additional to what Robin said.
Yeah, I think there's something in hiring the right people, but it's very difficult being a European, or even if you go to another country, really getting to the bottom of somebody, it's really tough. But I think, adding to what Robin was saying on that, having been able to sell a product in your home country or in Europe is not the same as the US. So there's a big thing I know in SaaS companies about product market fit. Once you sort of get started, before you accelerate and really start spending money on sales and marketing. And it's exactly the same when you move to the US. You first have to go and find your sort of product market fit, and get that first sort of efficiency on marketing as well as selling, and only then start scaling, else it gets very expensive and you get nowhere. And the only thing is what you do is hiring and firing, but because you think it's about the people. No, it's not about the people, it's about missing the product market fit. So that's a really key thing, and it's a difficult one, because the market will be different. There's nobody that I've seen that sells the same story in the US as there have been in Europe. And actually Europe can also, whatever your home countries, can also learn from the learnings in the US. So it's really going both ways. It's getting experience there, appreciating the experience, and it's sometimes tough for European founders because they know how to sell it. But it is different. So it's appreciating all that and sort of putting it in the mix, and also feeding it back to Europe. Which is a key thing. To Robin's point on, for instance, location, unless there's a really good reason to go to Silicon Valley, I would stay at the East Coast, because it's a killing difference. The time difference, 3 hours, and it will not help with your, say, European team to work with your US team. It's going to be very tiring, and it's fine for the first quarter, it's fine for the second quarter, but after a year it gets really tiring to start working with the US guys after you've done a long day in the Netherlands, and it's getting annoying. If I have to take calls at like 10, 11 o'clock at night, I have to do it once in a while. It gets tiring.
It's nice for the first month, but
yeah, it's nice to travel to Silicon Valley, all those kind of things. But yeah, and the customers usually, I mean, if it's about enterprise software, the customers are not in Silicon Valley; they're on the East Coast typically. So that's also where the money is.
Yeah, I mean, New York from here, it's like a 6 hours flight. I just fly in there on Tuesday, and on Friday I can fly back again, and it's okay. I can still be home for my family in the weekends. So. And that's not possible if you do that in San Francisco, basically. So totally agree. Yeah. And also to the point of the product market fit, we had a great product here in Europe. No, first in the Netherlands. Then we basically figured out how to sell this in Europe. But now it's totally different again. Now we have to figure out how to actually sell that product in the US. Also, indeed, finding our sweet spot in terms of product market fit is again a new challenge. So I totally agree. Yeah.
What about then the don'ts, right? Or any mistakes, fuck-ups that you've made that you can share? Because as it's kind of fairly recent, was there something that you didn't get quite right? Or perhaps something that was common advice that absolutely don't do this?
Yeah, I think maybe to Roel's point, just don't think that we can sell in Europe and we can also do that there, right? At first we figured, okay, we just use the same documentation, the same product, the same sales decks, the same verticals which we're used to in Europe, and it basically doesn't work. And also what you're seeing there is that the market is far more advanced there. Not only in terms of our product and competition, basically our industry, but also in the technology everybody's using there. I mean, people, all the SaaS companies there are using tools like Salesloft, right? Already for ages, and in Europe, hardly anybody knows about Salesloft. So there is so much advancement there, and you really have to make use of all that knowledge and extract that. So don't just think that you're able to do it with exactly the same stuff as here in Europe.
Did the so you mentioned you raised the Series A, and then I guess kind of not long after you opened the US office, did your VCs actually say, "Hey, Robin, now you need to open an office, like get moving on that"?
It was actually my own decision. I think when we did our round, by the way, I totally agree with all the insights Chris shared. Exactly the same experience. When we were doing our round, we basically had a group of VCs, maybe half of them, who said, you definitely need to go to US as soon as possible. Use all the money, go there, and build your team there. Roel was one of them. And you have 50% of the group who say, no, you can also focus on Europe. It's such a big market. US is super expensive. Hardly anybody, really makes it there. So you already, get a little bit of feeling on maybe the risk appetite, for the VCs have basically, when you are in conversation with them on securing your round. In our specific case, they didn't really push for US. We already had that in our plans when we pitched the story to do the investment. So it's basically our own decision. I'm not sure, if it wasn't in our plans, I'm not sure if our VCs would be pushing that in the first year. Because, after you've raised, first round, you have so much capital, you have so much to do, basically you have to scale your team, you're going to invest more in R&D, the sales team gets grown a lot, you have to, work on your product. So I'm not sure if that would be the first priority for our specific VCs, I guess. In the US, you have one big market. It is freaking huge. And if we want to do that in every individual country here in Europe, it's going to take a lot of effort. Getting to know the cultures and languages, setting up different offices. So if you have a big product and you feel that there is a big market there, yeah, I mean the Netherlands, it's such a tiny country.
It's all about unit economics. You see that in e-commerce always. The rocket guys in Berlin always look at unit economics, and that's the beauty of the SaaS business. You can also measure everything, which was different. When I started a while ago, there was not much to measure. And here you can.
Let's go to the next question. So I guess this one for you. Did you change your sales strategy in Europe based on the learnings from the US?
Yeah, definitely a lot. Basically, it's on the account executive side, but also on the sales development side. So our BDRs, which we shouldn't have according to Jacco, but we have a full team. And what we've seen is that the US market is far more advanced in terms of methodology, in terms of tooling, technology, compared to Europe. So basically, we also sit in an office with another SaaS company, US-based company, and we really learn on a day-to-day basis what the newest best practices are. And if you're not there, if you're not physically there, then you don't know about these things, or you see it too late, or. So for us, it really helped basically to improve our SDR team in terms of methodology and tooling. Certainly, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's the same as that, and that's maybe to you. I mean, it's great that you can you sit next to guys in the office, but also to come to these kind of things and sort of start sharing that as well, because everybody's having the same challenge in this room. There's not a lot of people competing with you, and usually even in the business you are, I mean, you're competing, but most of them they're changing the market. So. You sort of want to create the market together, because if you have to do it on your own, it's going to be very expensive. So sharing all that stuff is, I think, to the benefit of all.
Totally agree. And apart from going to SaaS Talk, obviously, conference, I would definitely advise going to SaaSter. It's a conference based in San Francisco. I think it's one of the best US-based conferences. You learn so much in that one, in those 3 days or so. It's well worth the expense to go there. It's amazing. It's every time I go there, I've been there like 3 times or so. I'm like, oh my God, these guys are like 5 years ahead of us. What am I doing here in this tiny office in Amsterdam. It's so crazy to see.
Yeah, this question I was interested in myself. So you see a lot of the European SaaS companies when they move to the US and San Francisco, in the particular case Algolia and Front, Talkdesk, etc. Their founders typically go over there and kind of set up office. I don't know whether it's immediate, but they seem to be there. You're still here in the Netherlands. So, like, are you thinking about moving to the US, or why are you still here?
Yeah, why am I still here?
Why are you here?
Why am I here? It's still an option. We decided together with our investors not to do it for now, mainly because there are so many challenges also ahead of us. With the new investment, defining a new product, setting up the scalable sales operation in Europe as well, and we had a great opportunity for our first sales guy who was heading up our European organization, who's been with the company for 4.5 years, almost since the start, that he was super eager to go there. So we decided, okay, let's do this first for the first year, and after first year, evaluate, okay, how are things going, how does the revenue look like, how do the KPIs look like, and then see what the next steps are. So for us, we had other opportunities, but I can imagine, as I mentioned in the beginning, you have to have people moving, because else it's not going to work. So if it's not one of your early employees, then maybe yourself. I know it helps if you go there, obviously. But yeah, it's obviously also a tough decision to actually do that and pick up all your stuff and go there.
Do you believe that the founders have to be in the US at some point?
I always ask them who is planning to go, because it's always fun. We are always funding US expansion strategy. So, and it's key to Robin's point that there's sort of founders DNA there. The biggest commitment to customers, your future customers in the US, is also if the founder is there. I've seen it different. Well, I've also seen it not work. Founders going there, or sort of that it went too slow because they're still sort of doing the same way as they've been doing in Europe, and there's the sense of urgency in the US is so much higher, and hiring the right people is also pretty tough. So for a Dutch CEO to hire the right people in the US, it's not an easy thing. And we've quite successful companies that I see struggling with that. And I sometimes wonder what would have happened if they got a really senior guy in the US, sort of hand him maybe the CEO title even, or CEO US, for that matter, whatever, titles are for free. I think it's important for the CEO, especially, to make up his mind, does he want it or not, and put timelines to it. And if he doesn't, fine too. But then design a plan how to get senior management there as well. I think one of the earliest successes was SAP, and why? Not because the guys in Waldorf. It was they hired a phenomenal CEO in the US, and he beat Oracle in his own home turf. So. But you have to then hire the best you can get, and it's tough to hire a senior guy for a company from Europe, because that's a tough one for a US person to start working for a European company.
And freaking expensive. These guys in the US, if you want to hire such a person, it can easily cost you like 300-400K a year.
And there's also a good chance of failure.
And there's pretty good chance of failure, so then you piss off 400K in 1 year.
And you lose a bit of an opportunity, which is maybe even more expensive.
Which is maybe even worse, yeah.
Let's just take two more questions then. Let's start with the top one. How should companies maintain a healthy culture when they set up in the US? Robin, do you want to take that?
Yeah, I don't know if you, I don't know if you guys have any offices, apart from the Amsterdam office. We already had like a larger office in Madrid where we do development. So we basically copied some of these things also to the US office. So we're pretty strong in setting our corporate culture, core values and all these things, which maybe Rockefeller habits, maybe you heard of that name. Everything we basically do is according to the Rockefeller habit methods. So we do like the core value stuff. We completely copy that in the US as well. We have monthly town halls where we and the senior management team do an update, and these guys actually dial in. I'm there every 4 weeks or so for a week, chatting with the team, making sure that they get the vibe and the positivity. But in the end, it will always be a satellite office. You can never recreate exactly the same culture as it's here. But if you really move people from here to there, then hopefully they can spark some kind of same energy and same vibe in their own way in that specific office. But you have to be careful that it's not going to be totally different than what you have in HQ.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that you can always do is actually move people from the satellite office back to your office, have them work, especially in a ramp-up period here, so they make their friends here and pick up the culture and all those kind of things. So there's a lot to be gained right in the beginning, and very close to them. And another thing I've seen working very well with company is just at least have one annual whatever kickoff. Have everybody together, even if it means like 100 people flying from the US or anywhere else to the Netherlands. It is an expensive exercise, but it's worth every penny of it. Yeah. So that's always the easiest one to approve, that expense.
I agree. Oh, that's easy. No, and one of the practical things is, if somebody starts working abroad, then he flies into the Amsterdam office for 3 weeks. He works here, meets everybody. Then he flies back again, works 1 week in the satellite office. Then he experiences, oh my God, this is totally different than working in the HQ. And I encounter all these things, and I cannot really talk to people. And then the week after, he flies back again for another week in the Amsterdam office to actually solve all the issues which he experienced in the 1 week where he actually worked in the satellite office. And that rhythm basically worked pretty well for us. Because then you started realizing what you miss if you basically fly back, but you can also fix it immediately the week after.
Let's take one more question. I'll let you pick.
Second is 0, so that's an easy question.
So take the last one if you're happy, and then we'll wrap it up.
Yeah, share more resource about learning to scale up. I mean, I think one of the best things you can do is basically talk to other founders, because that has learned me so much. But also you get some kind of energy and some kind of vibe and some kind of, oh, this guy is in the same problems, and okay, that is also good to hear. So talking to others is, I guess, is the best advice you can get. And specifically for US, just go there. Visit some conferences, then you experience the vibe and how far they are and what you have to do in order to get to that level.
Yeah, and it's not getting any easier. I liked Chris' comment at some point that he had just 5 top priority problems, which was all money related. And then when that was gone, he got all the other ones that are all about management. So there's a steep learning curve there, and a lot to learn from each other.
Cool. All right, well, thanks guys. Been great guests. So let's give them a round of applause.